Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Wherever you are in the world, welcome back to the Caring Economy with me, Toby Usnik. Today, we're thrilled to have as our guest Brian Boles. Brian is the Senior Development Director at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. For those of you not familiar with Johns Hopkins or U.S. higher institutions of learning, it is a preeminent school, university with a stellar business school within it, and that's where Brian sits. Brian, welcome to the Caring Economy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Toby. Thanks for having me.
We first got acquainted when you read my book, The Caring Economy, and reached out to me, and we had some great sort of back and forth and chatting, and then even a little bit of what should I say, a coaching session, because you were going in for a role which was very exciting and a big utility down there, based on your experience, which is all about community involvement, community, a social impact, basically.
Right.
Brian, tell us a little bit about your career journey. Where did it start? Take us on that journey and maybe give us some of the pivots where you went left and others went right.
Sure. So I started at my alma mater, St. Francis Academy, which is a private school, high school in Baltimore. It's the oldest Black continuously operated educational institution in the country. So founded in 1828, amazing story, founded by Mother Mary Lang. I called the athletic director and said, I want to help out with the baseball program.
Mm-hmm.
Back and said, what do you think about being a head coach? So to me, it was like someone offered me a big league coaching job. And I didn't want to just coach a team. I wanted to build a program. So my father was recently retired, Baltimore City Police Department. My brother had flexibility in his schedule. So we all came together to build a program. We won 2 games our first year and moved on to coach some amazing young men that we won a championship in 2009. We sent about a dozen kids to play college baseball. Mm-hmm. But after my first year, I said, what job can I get that's going to get me off at 3:00 so I continue to do what I love? Mm-hmm. It was teaching. So I coached and taught for 8 years at St. Francis. Towards the back end of that, I took my kids to a showcase in Virginia. I met 2 African-American scouts who were brothers, and I essentially learned about the scouting industry, and I thought that would be a great opportunity for myself to get in. Mm-hmm. So back home to Baltimore, and I called every major league club, and about half of them called back. And that led to an opportunity with the Detroit Tigers, and then led to an opportunity to go to scout school,
which I'd never heard of before.
Yeah, so it's an
institution.
It's a 2-week program in Arizona. So I was still teaching and coaching. I was probably in year 7 or 6 or 7 at that time. So it was a great opportunity to get in. I was offered a contract to work part-time with the Detroit Tigers as a regional scout. Mm-hmm. And, I was kind of in 2 worlds. So I was between baseball and this academic space and teaching, but I wasn't sure which direction I wanted to go. An opportunity opened up to run the community center, to be the director of a community center at St. Francis Academy. It was a zero-based budget. So that was really my first introduction into fundraising. It was, like, whatever you want to do, great, go get the money to do it, go fund those projects. So we did it. We had an after-school program, which continued for many years. I had big shoes to fill because the previous director was essentially the first director, and older than I was. So he did a great job. So I was able to build on the success there. I started a books and baseball summer camp where I was the executive director. My brother was the director of the camp. It was a 4-week program during the summer, which brought in kids as old as 12, as young as 6 years old. And that really stemmed from my passion to get to kids a lot earlier and to try to make an impact before they get to high school. And had success there. And after a couple of years, the principal pulled me in office and said, Brian, what do you think about being the school's director of development? I thought, wow, that seems like a big job. And I jumped in and I said, I'd rather be in a position to help save the school then hope something magically happens. So
Mhm.
a good board, some good volunteers, some exceptional donors, we were able to really get the school off of life support because it was in danger of closing,
Mhm.
and put it on better financial footing. And it's, I think, 193 years old today. So 93, 94. So it was an incredible opportunity. I learned so much in these small nonprofit environments and small schools. You wear so many hats. So I had a chance to do so many things I wouldn't have a chance to do otherwise if I was at a large institution. And I had a lot of responsibility as well.
Yeah. And then it teed you up for other things.
Absolutely. So it set me up to move on to Catholic Charities in Baltimore, where I was the director of major and corporate gifts. Incredible work that that organization does. Makes a huge difference in the whole state of Baltimore, quite frankly, although it's titled or named Catholic Charities of Baltimore.
Mhm.
And that led to an opportunity at the Carey Business School at Johns Hopkins. So it's where I am now, and just trying to make a difference in whatever role I'm in and whatever institution I serve through my work.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, today we have on the Caring Economy Brian Boles, who's the Senior Development Director at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School in Baltimore, Maryland. Two things in what you just shared with us, Brian. You said that going to the academy almost saved your life. That's a huge statement. Can you say a little bit about that? And then also, I want to explore the concept of social impact, because you talk about development as your career, profession, or training. But what I heard through all that, I think a lot of our listeners here on the Caring Economy have heard, is social impact. So how did the academy save your life?
So it's, as a religious institution, it gave me a spiritual foundation you're in a space where it's a small school. It's, you have nuns there. You have this very caring and loving staff and faculty.
Mhm.
That is exactly what I needed. And I didn't know I needed it at the time,
Mhm.
but when my mom essentially said, "You're going to St. Francis Academy no matter what," that was it. And of course I went fighting and kicking and screaming, but um, just the level of care, the good examples. I guess one thing to note is this was my first time having Black male teachers,
Mhm.
and then going back into the classroom myself.
Mhm.
I'm back in terms of what impact that had on
Mhm.
me, and then as a result, what impact that's had on young people that I've worked with.
Yes,
But
positive role models. Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it was remarkable, and not just one or two, quite a few Black male teachers.
Mhm.
Um, Young man, I think you need that. As a young Black man, you need that. That's a difference maker, and I think that made a significant impact on my development as a young man.
Mhm. Well, I think representation absolutely matters for all of us. As a gay man, it was later in life that I was around out gay males who actually were either became mentors or who were role models
Hmm.
for me.
Yep.
So absolutely matters. I agree with you. And I want to come back to the whole topic of raising young Black men, but tell us a little bit also about the social impact part of it, which ties into your whole career journey.
Yeah. So, one thing I realized is that with young people specifically, they pay a lot more attention. They pay attention to what you say, but a lot more on what you do. So it's
Mhm.
being that good example. And I think I've found those opportunities through my work, through mentoring, through running the community center where we had after school programs and serve meals of. It's a lot of times it was the last meal that the young people would eat, and this was for primarily kids in middle school and some in elementary school. Um,
Mhm.
and then the different programs and activities we engage them in. Um, you know, those things are incredibly impactful and meaningful. And um, you know, there's still time today where I'll run into young people that I may have met once, Toby, or maybe I spent a week with them. We had a books and baseball summer camp that I founded while I was at the community center.
Mhm.
And I mean, they can tell you kind of what you wore on certain days and things you said that stuck with them. And that means something. That is a true reward as an educator, as a teacher, as a coach. Those things matter, and you hope that they in turn pay it forward.
Yep. Change agent, really.
That's like
a real
absolutely
change agent. Yeah. So that sort of you found your way into this sort of social impact concept just because of the life you were leading, and I suspect the values your mom and your academy instilled in you.
absolutely.
So tell me then, you were once a young Black man, now you've mentored many of them, and it can be young Black girls as well. But I'm curious about our audience are young people starting out on their careers, and a lot of C-suite executives. So I think to myself, what does a C-suite executive need to know today in an era of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, that they haven't heard or that hasn't really yet resonated with them? Talk to my audience. Tell them a little bit about your tips for businesses being even better at diversity and inclusion.
Well, I think it is essentially that being able to have those diverse opinions, ideas, and individuals within your company, but also that are peers and that are at the same level you are. And the more you see that diversity at leadership levels, I think you'll begin to see greater impact. I mean, we talked about George Floyd, we talked about Breonna Taylor, and too many others. And of course, George Floyd was that, at the tipping point for a lot of companies where you saw, these statements, these bold statements of we're going to listen and we're going to change and we're going to do better. And I hope that holds true and there's a commitment there. But I will say candidly, I saw certain comments and statements of companies that I questioned whether they had any representation maybe in their communications department, because maybe there was a miss here or there in terms of wording or the way they presented something. So that is very important to be able to have that representation and have, someone that, is again your peer or has a senior enough position where they can, and you have that relationship with them, meaningful relationship with them. So it's not just I know Brian or I know whomever. So yes, I know a Black person, a Black professional, but I have to have a meaningful relationship. So the conversation has to go beyond the meetings we have. We're just passing each other, talking about the ball game or the goings on of the world. But really, how well do you really know me? And how well do you know your Black colleagues? Your colleagues that are of color or of simply diverse backgrounds.
Right, and taking a genuine interest. So Brian, tell me a little bit about businesses and being better with the diversity and inclusion. What say you?
Well, I think representation matters, number one, and specifically at that leadership level. I think beyond that, getting to know those individuals and adding some depth to those relationships. So beyond just passing each other in meetings and conversations, but really get to know your Black and brown colleagues. I think also understanding your company culture is incredibly important. So it gives you a real good sense of maybe what the experience may be like for people that don't look like you or
the other
come from diverse backgrounds. So that's incredibly important. And it requires you to look in the mirror, look yourself in the mirror as an organization, which could be difficult. And then I think open conversations, being able to have those open conversations across the board is incredibly important as well, where we can have some meaningful conversation and open dialogue, and no one feels like they're threatened. That there's truly a culture that is inviting of individuals of different backgrounds, and that it is truly inclusive. So I think those are things that are paramount to a company being able to really take those strides in creating that culture and that environment around diversity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm. It's really so basic, even I think, literally and figuratively. I think we're all better when we can look at the other in the eyes and see them, right? Like just acknowledging your humanity is a huge starting point. Would you agree?
No question. Absolutely. I think the more we do that, the better we are as a society, quite frankly. And then we can make those small changes, small but impactful changes within our own worlds and organizations and companies. I think that's incredibly important. I think just another kind of note to mention is, I talk to a lot of company executives, and they struggle with how do we get more diversity, more people of color in leadership positions.
Mm-hmm.
So they've done a good job. They've taken that step of having diversity amongst their organization, but they usually stop at that mid-level manager role.
Mm.
And how do you get them to that kind of C-suite level? Because if you look at a lot of companies, there's not a great deal of representation in the C-suite, and maybe it's just one, right?
Mm.
And one thing we know is that, as Black people, we're not kind of, we don't all think the same, and we don't all, have the same necessarily beliefs or upbringing, but so it's good to have different perspectives and not just kind of one person representing. I mean, that's a good first step, but I think the more and more you see diversity at that kind of leadership level, it's going to be incredibly impactful in terms of being able to make that difference in diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, stay with that a moment, Brian. So when there's that stalling moment at the sort of mid-level recruitment process, any observations or suggestions on successful ways to break through that sort of blockage?
So I think one of the first steps is you have to have a sponsor that will advocate and that takes a genuine interest in making it happen. Mm-hmm. So beyond just a conversation of it sounds good to say, well, how do we do this? So we need to do more of this, right? We think of some of the statements that have come out post George Floyd. We need to do this. We'll do better. Okay, but what are the deliberate steps you're going to take to actually make that happen? And not just relying on your chief diversity officer, because their success is only as good as the buy-in at that top level in the leadership. They can continue to push and try to make strides, but it has to be a sincere and it has to be deliberate action taking place at that leadership level to make it happen. And you've got to have someone in the room that will step up or stand up and say, we've got to make a change. And I see someone that's bright and talented, and they deserve to be in this room as well.
So if I may, then what I'm hearing you say is to our listeners who are making these decisions real time and grappling with these challenges, if you don't have that person in the room, if that is not you, then bring somebody in who can do that. We're seeing a lot of hiring now of chief diversity officers at institutions. I'm not fully convinced that that's the only way or the best way to get past that blockage, but certainly it is bringing talent in from outside that is going to be that catalytic agent to break through that blockage. I think time will tell. Would you agree?
I would agree. And one thing I've heard of some companies doing is attaching it to compensation.
Oh yeah, that's quite a big one.
So that makes the needle move very, very, very quickly.
Absolutely. But then how do you measure it? How do you quantify it? It can be fraught, but at a minimum, I think great brands need to have those conversations, to have them in a transparent way and an inclusive way, and grapple with it, because there aren't quick wins with these kinds of challenges. But boy, oh boy, I think it's where we have to put our energies. So
no question.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have Brian Boles, Senior Development Director at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. On the communications point you made, Brian, I'm chuckling because as a career communications professional, I'm more interested at this point in my career in the unintended message than the intended message that someone puts out. So if a corporation makes a declaration around Black Lives Matter and they want a certain message to go out, but it falls flat, to your point, I wonder if they don't have a person of color, perhaps a Black person in their communications department.
Absolutely.
And do they end up misfiring? a basic example I'll ask you, because I'm learning as I go. Would a person writing a press release about a corporate statement around Black Lives Matter choose African American or Black to describe the situation? Does it matter to you as a Black person, or what does the communications professional need to know?
Yeah. So I think starting with who's the attendant, who's the
Audience.
attended audience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who is it for, right? Is it internal document? Is it external? Is it, for a certain customer group, for example? For me, it does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
I think what matters more is the language that's around it, and all of the words that are around it. But to take it even a step further, the actions that are behind those words.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say African American, and the communications person says, "Yes, spot on. That's perfect."
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, walking the walk, and you're not bringing those words to life through your actions,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter. Um, I know there are words that I don't want to see, obviously, as it relates to how you identify people of color, Black peoples. But yes, no. For me personally, it doesn't matter. I'm more tuned into the language that's around, or the statement in its entirety, and then what's next.
In terms of the scouting, and also with the school, the role of parents today, it seems to me that parents are more involved than ever for probably all sorts of reasons. But is that your observation? Has parenting become more involved in the way young people are conducting their lives, or less, or the same as always?
Yeah, so I'm tempted to say more, right? And I'm saying this as a new parent, a father of a 1-year-old, right? So I may be guilty of it as well. There's the access to information, and maybe sometimes too much information can leave families or parents that have the best intentions but misguided. So just jokingly, if I was to start a business, or I could probably counsel parents on, just parents of athletes, not just baseball, but parents of athletes, kind of how to navigate this very difficult space, because it's so much of a copycat mindset, because one parent does this, another parent does it, and you think you do all of these things for your young person to get to the next level. And candidly, sometimes the child is not necessarily good enough, and no one will tell them that.
Right.
But they'll take their money, or they'll say you've got to go to Division I school, and tell you all of these options where they could come and have a great experience in the classroom, and on the baseball field, or whatever sport it is, at a Division III or Division II school. So
Yep. Well, maybe you should start a side hustle around that. Parents who have aspiring athletic sons and daughters. I also think that the times we live in with social media, and particularly reality shows, these competitive shows would have parents think that they have to go to the mat for their kids, not necessarily because they have the talent, but that's just what the show audience wants.
yes.
I want to ask you also about mentors. They've been important in your life. They've been important in my life. Any observations or thoughts around mentors?
Yeah, so I think you asked a question earlier around kind of big wins, and something I'm looking forward to is doing a presentation to a group of underrepresented minority students at Carey around the importance of being a good mentee. So there's so much information about being a mentor, but not what it looks like to be a mentee, and how to own those relationships. And I think that's something that I've had success with in my life. And I think about mentors, I have quite a few. I mean, from a fundraising perspective, John Zeller, who's the VP for Development and Alumni Relations at University of Penn. I formally reached out to him when I was breaking into this profession and said, "Hey, I need a mentor," and he's been great over the years. Willie Horton, again, I mentioned, he's a great baseball mentor, but I think more recently, within the last 5 years or so, one person that's been incredibly just, I think a lifesaver and someone that I've always been able to count on is a mutual friend we have, Carey Chandler.
Oh, we love Carey. Now running HR at Endeavor. Yeah, she's awesome. Shout out to Carey.
Yes. So she's been great, and as busy as a schedule she has, and she always finds time. I could be going through something in work, or just want to run something by her or get her impressions on something. And she's always made time available. It could be, I could shoot her an email at midnight and 2 a.m. there's a message will pop up, right? Or what have you. And she's probably in another part of the country. Yeah. So she's been a great mentor, but I think, the importance of owning those relationships, mm-hmm. making it relationships of reciprocity. So it's mm-hmm. not about me and what I can do. It's how I can help my mentor. And even if it just means me being successful as a reward, I'm happy to do that as well.
Absolutely. I think, Carey, she's even in the book, The Caring Economy, because she helped me with our employee engagement exercise was bringing in a bunch of cultural leaders. And these nonprofits, as you probably know from your experience in Baltimore, oftentimes they have the same concerns as corporations. How do you recruit and retain talent and develop it? And so Carey and the Chief Diversity Officer, Disney, and I did a little brown bag lunch with these executive directors. And it was so helpful to them. It wasn't a check from us at Christie's. It was Christie's at the time. She was our head mm-hmm. of HR. But it was so meaningful to these executive directors because they not only got great counsel from established HR professionals mm-hmm. In corporate sector, but it plugged them automatically into a network, not only with just Carey and our other co-host, but their other peers from these nonprofits. So she has always been amazing. She's a rock star. I'm glad that you brought her up.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause for a moment. We have today Brian Boles, who's Senior Development Director at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. Brian, stay with me till after the break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Again, today we're with Brian Boles, Senior Development Director at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School in Baltimore, Maryland. You are a development professional. I would characterize as social impact professional, Brian. Tell me a little bit about how you're going out into not only the Baltimore community, but the larger community that you're fundraising in, and fostering social impact, making the communities better, or positioning the business school as doing that.
Yeah, so I think what excites me is that at Carey we have programs that are centered around social impact. So I think about our community consultant lab, where we have students partnering with nonprofits, small businesses, minority-owned businesses, and helping them solve business issues. Mm-hmm. This has been going on for quite a few years prior to me even coming to Carey, and that's through our Office of Experiential Learning. So being able to apply those things outside of the four walls of the classroom and putting them into action and actually helping and making an impact. Mm-hmm. So things I'm incredibly proud of, and those are things that are easy to fundraise around. With respect to kind of diversity and other initiatives, we have a summer business academy where we bring in students from historically Black colleges and universities, rising juniors and seniors, mm-hmm. for a week business boot camp. And we partner with an organization called Inroads, and it's an incredible program, and the students are even more impressive. And we, obviously this past year with the pandemic, we couldn't make that happen because it's an in-person event, obviously, or in-person program. But we're hoping, crossing our fingers, that we're able to make that happen this year. So being able to fundraise for those types of things, or scholarships for my underrepresented minorities, those are easy things for me to rally the troops around and to garner some support and have conversation around that. So that's essentially what my work looks like, and really from a corporate standpoint, is trying to find the alignment with their value proposition and make that connection so that it is a fit, because there are a lot of good ideas. There are a lot of people that are doing great work, but we want to make sure that it is a fit and there's some alignment with what's important to them, which we hope one of those, or if not all of those, would be of interest.
Right, and then that gives you lasting impact, because you don't want it to be, one leader leaves, another comes in, and it's forgotten. You really want to have
Absolutely.
effect. Can you tell me, in that sense, what's been one of your greater successes in the past year with the school in terms of either a great fundraising match, a corporate contribution, or a private donor? Anything really kind of buzzworthy you want to share?
Yeah, so we have a beloved Black professor by the name of Dr. Calvin. And so he's got a reach, and I would not be surprised if there's one of your listeners, if not some of your listeners, who's been a student of Dr. Calvin. But we surprised him with a scholarship in honor of, or in his name and in his honor. And it was a collective effort by individuals that he taught specifically, and this is another kind of diversity initiative we have going on, which is our leadership development program, which is for mid-level minority managers, or historically was for mid-level minority managers, that we are relaunching in 2022. So I'm super excited about that. But this group is an impressive group of primarily African-American, young people of color who were mid-level managers or aspiring to get there, that went through a certificate program. A lot don't want to get their MBA, but he was their instructor. He was the leader of that program. And so we were able to rally everybody together, get people to contribute, make meaningful contributions, and then surprise him with a virtual celebration to announce this scholarship, which his reaction was priceless and worth every bit of work that we put to make that happen. So that's a huge win, especially being in the pandemic, because most of the people I could not get face to face with.
So Brian, with that scholarship initiative, if our listeners want to either apply for it or donate to it or learn more about Carey in general, what's the URL or the social media? Where should we go online to learn more?
So it's carey.jhu.edu is the website, and pretty easy to navigate. And then Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, just about on any social media outlet that we're on. So it's pretty easy to find.
And tell them that Brian Boles sent you.
Yes.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, today we have with us Brian Boles on the Carey Economy. He's a senior development director, I would say a social impact guru, working at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. Also an African-American man who has really mentored so many countless youth, and started out with a real passion and a drive around baseball. And I want to go back to that. We have a lot of sports fans here on the Carey Economy. We had Mark Patrick on a couple of weeks ago. You probably heard. Baseball is a part of your life. It has been. I've never met a professional scout before. What's that world like?
So it is. So I'll say the first time that I was out watching baseball and realized I was getting paid, I had to pinch myself. But it's an incredible job to stay. It's an incredible opportunity to stay connected with the game. It's an incredible job because you get a chance to travel and see good baseball and sometimes not so good baseball, but that's a part of the job. And in the Mid-Atlantic, sometimes you're talking about February and March, and even into April, there are some very cold days. So you've got to be out and watching ball games in the cold, which is different than playing in the cold. But that opportunity came about with really just, and I guess it'd be helpful just to share this story, but I actually met two African-American scouts at a baseball showcase, high school baseball showcase in Virginia Beach, where I met some of my players. And that was the first time that I had even, I think, saw Black scouts.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what did you do to get in? He said, well, it's kind of serendipity because it's not a job where you can just go online and apply on Indeed or, one of the job sites. You've got to know somebody. So it's so connected. So I said, man, that sounds like a great kind of thing to explore. I came home back to Baltimore and I called every major league club and left a message and said, this is Brian Boles, interested in scouting. Please give me a call back. Look forward to hearing back from you. And half of them called back.
Bravo.
And so it led to this door opening, getting in with the Detroit Tigers, going to scout school in Arizona for 2 weeks.
Scout school, wow.
And, getting a contract. So it was incredible because most people that are scouts, specifically most people that are Black and that are scouts, play professionally. Mm-hmm. I did the fortune to play professionally, but it was incredible opportunity and gained some lifelong friends that'll be with me forever. So,
and I would imagine some great skills that you're applying to this day. I mean, what does talent look like? How do you recruit it? How do you develop it? How do you retain it? I mean, that's a big part of what I think the caring economy is all about. How are you going to really meet the shareholder, the customer, the employee of today and tomorrow, and make sure they want to engage with your brand? And you have to know it. You have to have that eye, that gift to go out and not only scout it, attract it, but then develop it, retain it, and play it forward.
Absolutely.
So what happens at Scout School? I'm kind of curious.
Sure. So it no longer exists, but it is a 2-week program where essentially it's like the movie Groundhog Day, where you wake up and do the same thing over and over again. Wake up, big meeting, we'll go out to watch baseball, and then we'll come back and we'll write reports for the rest of the day based on what we saw. Mm-hmm. And you have your instructor. It's about 60 participants. We had Ken Griffey Jr.'s brother in there. We had former big leaguer Jock Jones, who's still a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. Flash Gordon, Tom Gordon, whose sons are in the big leagues now. So it's a good group. Just some incredible people there that are now elevating into different roles within baseball, which is impressive as well. But that's essentially it. You go, you watch baseball, you get instruction, and you write reports essentially for the rest of the night.
But so why did it go away? Did something change in the profession, or?
Yeah, I think it was just kind of changing in leadership. There was new leadership that came in because it was under the umbrella of Major League Baseball. Wanted to go in a different direction. But just an incredible opportunity for me. And Toby, I'll say this, I was actually teaching, and this program takes place in September. So I had enough equity at my school where I could go to my boss and say, hey, I have this incredible opportunity. It's the beginning of the school year. Can I leave for 2 weeks? And no one batted an eye. So it
Fantastic. Well, that's a smart leader to let you do that. So again, ladies and gentlemen, today we have Brian Boles, who's Senior Development Director at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. I wanted to, and also in a past life was a professional baseball scout with the Detroit Tigers and the Milwaukee Brewers. Brian, I want to ask you to stay on a few more minutes. We're going to go to a quick break and come back. I have a couple more questions for you. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Welcome back to the Caring Economy with me, Toby Usnik, and Brian Boles. Today with us from the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. I want to talk a little bit about your books and baseball program that you started, I think, at the Academy, right?
Yes.
And you've been recognized with honors for it. What's it all about? And also, what's the URL if people want to learn more about it?
Yeah, so I'll start with the kind of worst news, but the program no longer exists. Okay. As the school was going through financial hardship, I had to kind of dedicate all of my energy to that, and it was difficult to kind of fundraise for both, given the school's needs were so great. But the books and baseball program started from just the idea of there were a lot of young men, young boys that then became young men, and I coached them at St. Francis, and I thought to myself, if I could get to them just a little bit earlier, man, I could make a huge difference. And I didn't want to go out and just coach a travel team and have the best players. I wanted to try to have a broader reach to anyone that wanted to come, regardless of where in the city or what program or what team they were, could benefit from this program. So we started it, raised the money. People said, you're crazy. No one's gonna, pay for black kids to play baseball. No one's gonna support it. And that's like, that's the best thing someone can tell me is like, it's not gonna happen, or no one's going
For a challenge. Yeah, that's the
absolutely. I love that. So we did that. It was a program that existed for four years. Just incredible young people that are now, in college, and one is going to University of Alabama to play baseball, and just a number of other just great stories. With any of this, whether it's baseball or anything, I think, I always felt like I was teaching life, right? And the objective was really to produce good citizens. That was it.
Yep. Good for you. I share that. I think we're both purpose-driven people, and that's part of the reason I wrote The Caring Economy. I wanted to ask you also about professional sports teams, and are they genuinely interested in caring about their communities, and are they engaging their communities, do you believe?
I think generally speaking, yes, to answer your question. I think like fandom and having a built-in community, something that a lot of people rally around, it's attached to a city, definitely enhances and helps that effort. If I think a lot of companies and organizations could have that level of loyalty to their product or service, they would love it, right? If there was that type of fandom around their brand and service. But I think sports teams do a great job of it, generally speaking. And again, I think if most companies could get a fraction of what sports teams get in terms of enthusiasm and loyalty, they would be incredibly happy, and so would their shareholders. I think about a celebrity that was talking about trying to move his mom from, I believe, Buffalo to a warmer climate. And she said, I can't leave my Wegmans.
Wegmans is a food chain in the Northeast here where we live, and it's very well regarded by its patrons.
So, I mean, that is loyalty to the highest degree. But I've seen it done well. When I was with the Tigers, we did youth camps. I brought in my mentor and friend Willie Horton, who's a Detroit Tigers legend, to Baltimore to do youth baseball clinics, which was, mind blowing that you would come from Detroit, right? But it was an incredible experience. The parents, the kids, and we had a good time with it. And we to do it for several years. So that level of investment was good. I've seen the Baltimore Orioles do a great job of engaging their community members. And quite frankly, I truly, and I say this with full sincerity as a diehard Ravens fan, but not maybe with a little bias, but they did a phenomenal job of engaging the community. I think
what's the program called there? You called the fans the not birdhouse.
So the Orioles have the Birdland Hero. The Ravens have their own version of that where they'll bring in, community members, folks that are making a difference. But they do a great deal of work within the community. And honestly, it goes back to leadership.
Always.
To ownership. It goes back to, their president, general manager, all the way down to the folks that are boots on the ground. And it's part of their culture. So players come in, they buy into it, and they do a phenomenal job of it. I think they're exceptional.
Brian, I'm working on the second edition of The Caring Economy now, and we're going to spend a lot more time in this second book about the topic of governance. How are you leading your organization, and how are you verifying, auditing, monitoring, holding yourselves accountable? Because none of the I've always said CSR matters, it can be helpful, but if it's not done and internalized from the top down, it's not going to be optimized. And one way for sure to optimize it is good governance. So as you're saying, with the ownership, the leadership of these organizations, it's critical to have really successful CSR.
No question.
Brian, I have one last question for you, and then any thoughts you want to share. Building off of what you did with books and baseball, I know that one of the recognitions was from the Baltimore Orioles. They have, I think it's called Birdland Award.
Birdland Heroes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Birdland Heroes, which is a fabulous name. So it's been my observation through the years with CSR that the leagues really do it well, whether it's the NFL or the NBA, that the professional sports leagues, whether it's the owners, the players themselves, I'm not so certain, but they know that their communities, their fans are their reason for being. So that the Baltimore Orioles recognize your books and baseball program with their award speaks to that, I think. But would you agree? Is that a fair assessment of the professional sports leagues? Are they genuinely caring about their communities and engaged?
So I can say for sure, obviously Baltimore Orioles is one of those organizations that there's a commitment there. The Baltimore Ravens do a phenomenal job of community impact work. And they've got it down. They've, for whatever reason, they've figured it out, how, to embrace community members, how to recognize community members, how to support with their time, talent, and treasure, and then also being able to create these what we call meaningful partnerships, right? Or deepening these relationships. So it's not just, here's a check, right? I think I've heard you say, and, kind of throwing money at the problem is
least creative solution.
In my words, is the least creative, right? Or the laziest way to do it.
Yes.
And of course, as a fundraiser, sure, yes, we do want money, right? Because without money, the great ideas stay in the file cabinet. But we're looking for meaningful partnerships and meaningful relationships and those deepening relationships. And how can we end a problem, right? How can we solve an issue? That's ultimately, right, what do we hope to end through our efforts or enhance?
Yeah, so it's so obvious to me that you, Brian Boles, already have a great legacy that's only going to get greater. I want to thank you for joining us here on the Caring Economy today. Ladies and gentlemen, again, it's been Brian Boles with me, Toby Usnik. He's the Senior Development Director at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. Brian, you get the last word. What would you like to say to our audience?
So today, today we lost a great in Hank
Aaron's, yeah.
And so I did not have the opportunity to meet Hank Aaron, and I got a chance to just hear his stories. And I have a good friend and mentor, Willie Horton, with the Detroit Tigers, who knows him well or knew him well. But I guess one last word of advice, and a quote he had was, "Keep swinging, right? Regardless of what's going on, keep swinging. If you're in a slump, keep swinging." So I want to kind of close just paying, honor to him and what he meant as a baseball player, but more importantly as a man. And he'll be sorely missed for sure. But keep swinging.
That's great, Hank Aaron. Great tribute, and thank you again, Brian Boles. Have a great day.
Thank you.